We're heading back to Yosemite to see one of its most unique and seasonal sights. In the springtime, during nights with a full moon, something special appears in the mist of Yosemite Falls. A lunar rainbow. And I'm going to show you how to see it and capture it on camera in this guide to the Yosemite Falls Moonbow. We started our day a few hours south of Yosemite in Sequoia National Park, where we were doing a bit of filming before heading north to Yosemite to hopefully catch the moonbow. The moonbow is dependent on a few conditions: decent snowmelt feeding Yosemite Falls, a full moon, and, of course, clear skies. A late snowstorm had come rolling through the Sierras, stranding us in Sequoia for an additional day, meaning we'd only have a single night to catch the moonbow. Thankfully, the weather showed clear, so we packed up and made the drive up to Yosemite National Park. Yosemite simply never disappoints, especially that first look at the valley from tunnel view. My full guide to the park is linked above, but today we're focusing on its waterfalls. Yosemite's waterfalls are one of its biggest draws. And if viewed at the proper time of day, many even feature rainbows in their mist. During evenings with a full moon in the spring, Yosemite's largest waterfall lights up at night with an amazing lunar rainbow. April and May tend to be the best months for moonbow spotting, when Yosemite Falls is experiencing a greater flow due to winter snowmelt. If there's a heavy snowpack that year, it could very well continue to June and July too. I'll show you how to see and photograph the moonbow in just a bit, but first, let me show you the best places to actually see it from. Moonbows in Yosemite Falls can be seen in both the lower and the upper portion of the waterfall. For the lower falls, you'll want to be there not long after sunset, but more importantly, moonrise, when the full moon is in the sky opposite the waterfall. This is probably the easiest moonbow to see. The trail to the base of lower falls is short and relatively flat. It's important to note, you will get wet from this vantage point. The mist from the falls is heavy. Bring a towel or some kind of cover for your camera, and probably best to be shooting with a camera and lens combo that is weather sealed too. And if you're not interested in photographing the moonbow, then simply enjoy the view. The human eye can't make out the color in it, so it will look like, I guess, a gray rainbow spanning across the falls. The moonbow appears in the upper falls section too, generally a little later in the evening than the lower. And you have a few options on where to catch this one from, but we'll start with the easiest first. So, pretty much any vantage point from the valley road with a clear view of the upper falls gives you an opportunity to see it. This is from the south side of Cook's Meadow, and unfortunately this night, a mix of cloud cover and the moon rising behind Glacier Point made for a less than spectacular moonbow. Had I stayed one more night, the view here would have been even better. The point is that if you're looking for a view of the moonbow in Upper Falls, it's not too tough to find. This is the Cook's Meadow Loop, marked here on the map, part of a pathway that connects one side of Yosemite Valley to the other. Any of the pathways here provide good vantage points of the Upper Falls, and even sometimes an awesome reflection in the still waters around the meadow. Plus from here, you don't have to worry about the mist getting your camera wet. Plan to arrive just a little bit past moonrise. The next and more difficult option is to hike the Yosemite Falls Trail to about its halfway mark, where you get a spectacular, higher vantage point of the Upper Falls Cascade. You'll get a far more prominent moonbow from this position, but it's a workout. Plus, it will be dark out, so you'll definitely want a headlamp and careful footing. Two other options for catching the moonbow are from about the halfway point of the 4-mile trail, on the opposite side of the valley from the falls. It's important to note that this trail is often closed until late spring, but when it does open, it gives you the opportunity to grab maybe the rarest moonbow shot of all. This is Glacier Point. The road here doesn't open until late spring, meaning the only way to access it beforehand is by hiking up from the 4-mile trail. When conditions are just right in moonbow season, it's possible to catch one in Yosemite Falls from high above here, though I haven't been lucky enough to see this one myself yet. Alright, so that's where you catch the moonbow. So how do you capture it on your camera? Like I mentioned before, it should at least be faintly visible to the naked eye, but lacking any color. To get the full effect, you'll need to take a long exposure photograph. So for those unfamiliar with how to do that, here's what you'll need. 1. A tripod. You'll be shooting at a lower shutter speed, and without a tripod for stability, your photographs will come out blurry. 2. A remote shutter, or a programmed timer on your camera, so you're not causing camera shake when taking your moonbow photograph. 3. A towel if you're shooting at the lower falls or close to the upper falls. Your lens will get water on it from the spray of the falls, and you'll need to clean it off. Best to be shooting with a weather-sealed camera lens combo here. 4. A headlamp with a red light. Red light preserves your night vision, and is at least a little bit less intense. Minimize the amount of time you use your headlamp down here as a courtesy to others trying to capture the moonbow on camera. These were my settings for my moonbow shots. You don't need quite as low of a shutter speed for the moonbow as you would for a Milky Way shot, since you're shooting in direct moonlight. We arrived in Yosemite around midday to find the waterfalls flowing the strongest I had seen them yet. There's a lot of amazing falls here, but the one we're focusing on is this one, Yosemite Falls. Obviously, it was too early for any moonbows, so we headed to the Upper Pines campground and got set up. And once that was done, it was time to wait for nightfall. With the full moon rising, we arrived at Lower Yosemite Falls around 9 p.m. to find the moonbow already out. We quickly set up our tripods and got to work. It was tough trying to find the proper focus and keep the lens as dry as possible between shots. But I did manage to come away with this time lapse and photograph. The wind was dying down a bit, meaning the mist and moonbow were becoming less prominent here. We quickly hurried to Cook's Meadow to see if we could catch anything from the upper falls, and ended up with some pretty cool shots, especially with the fall's reflection in the water below. But I wanted more, another chance at shooting the moonbow. But with a packed summer, which included literally while I was in Yosemite shooting this video, closing on a house, and nursing a torn left meniscus, I wasn't making it back here for a while. So I did return, of course, and waited over a year to finish this video off. It's June of 2023, and with my meniscus mostly intact, I was back in Yosemite for a single weekend. To see the waterfalls raging due to the incredible snowpack and resulting snowmelt, and to hike the Upper Falls Trail finally, and catch the moonbow from up there. With this being a last-minute trip, snagging a campsite in any of the valley's campgrounds was near impossible, but I did luck out, and managed to get a site in the famous Camp 4, pretty much right at the start of the trail to the Upper Falls. I got in, set up camp, and immediately began the trail. Weather looked iffy for the following night, so this was very well my only chance to catch the moonbow again. And when I say looked iffy, it sure was. That footage of the moonbow from across the meadow from earlier? Yep, that was from the next night. For those of you unfamiliar, this trail is pretty tough, and nighttime doesn't make it any better. It's pretty much all switchbacks, obviously completely in the dark. So you'll need that headlamp. And it's also covered in these very large millipedes, so watch your step, I guess. Thankfully, I wasn't making the entire 3.5 mile trek to the top, only about halfway to the first viewpoint of the Upper Falls. And man, was it flowing this time. The moonbow was immediately visible, and way brighter than anything we saw last year. The only caveat with the falls flowing so strong this time meant I could only get so close before I started getting soaked. And this trail didn't have a ton of clear viewpoints. Regardless, I picked a spot and started rolling a time lapse. It was so visible though, I was even able to shoot it with my main video camera, the Sony a7S III, which is fantastic in low light. Some of this footage is pretty noisy, but it was still pretty cool to be filming in nothing more than moonlight. As for the time-lapse here, I was pretty pleased, even if it was a little tricky keeping my lens dry with the mist blowing every which way. Not bad. Not bad at all. And so, wrapped my moonbow time here in Yosemite.